Welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Braxton Hunter, and along with me is...
Matt Chisholm.
Matt Chisholm. Matt.
Yeah.
Matt of the Bible Brodown. This may be the first time you have ever been on any kind of Trinity Radio thing. Is that right?
I think that's it. That's right, yeah.
I'm so ashamed about that. I'm so sorry. Let us know if you're out there in the comments section, because we're just doing this, at least you may be seeing this later on YouTube, but currently we're just doing this in the Trinity Radio prime time group and on Facebook, and perhaps you didn't know that existed, and you can get there by going to Facebook and searching for it. But so this is only for a small group of people who may or may not have shown up. Currently 5 have shown up, Matt, and you said one of them is you.
Well, you're not supposed to say that, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're glad that you're out there. If you are, we got a thumbs up. Was that also you, Matt?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay.
Although I may throw it in here. Maybe a heart or something.
So we did this in the worst possible way. We didn't tell anyone that we were going to do this. We didn't advertise it. We didn't put it
Plan
out
ahead.
anywhere. So, and we really have no plans either. This is just, I thought we've got some free time here, and I never do anything with the Trinity Radio group. So, and I haven't talked to Matt in a while. So Matt, we haven't talked, and Bible Brodown has been like radio silent. What's happening?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. So the big thing for us is COVID has really changed Billy's work situation, and he just doesn't have the time he's already been struggling with time based on his promotions, he's saving the world, things like that. But he just doesn't have the time availability that he used to right now. So getting together with him is hard, and I could keep doing things like I've done in the past, where I just find, an early church father, or last time was Pelagius or something, and read it and then talk about it. But I don't like doing it solo too much, because the whole point is the bro down part, and I want to have him there, right? So
right. I had a really weird time with that whenever, and Pritchett will see this, he knows we've talked about it, that we used to say it's not really an episode of Trinity Radio unless both Pritchett and Hunter are present, and I still kind of feel that way. But it's just that ever since, let's say this time last year, maybe a little before, I started getting people responding to me or to, stuff or to Jonathan or about the Matt Dillahunty debate quite a bit. And I thought, I've got to jump on here and respond to this. And Pritchett wasn't always around. And it kind of just snowballed into a bigger thing. And now the audience, I think, is used to 2 or 3 uploads a week. And so it's taken over my life. But it's also become a pretty fruitful ministry too. So, but I'm glad to have you on here. I see here that we do have Luke Pixler is here. Luke, glad to have you on the show. Glad that you're with us. And he's a really cool guy. He's one of our patrons. So what are the plans for the future? Do you have a plan for the Brodown? What you're going to do? By the way, for anyone that doesn't know, Matt is a co-host with Billy Wendelin on a show called The Bible Brodown, where they mostly tackle Bible stuff, theology stuff. Occasionally they'll do kind of like a fun episode on something that's kind of paranormal or whatever. But the cool thing about it is, and I think this could be an interesting thing for people to know that don't know. Now, most of the people in this group probably know, but if I get this wrong, correct me. But Matt, you and Billy first got together because you found each other doing online gaming and arguing about theology and Calvinism. And you were a Calvinist and Billy was not a Calvinist. And you guys started arguing through email. Just so like old school that you're arguing through email.
I know.
And now you have that entire list and you call it the Book of Emails. And people can get that somehow, can't they?
Yeah, you go to our website, BibleBrodown.com, scroll down to the bottom, and I think it's the Legendary Book of Emails or the Epic Book of Emails, something like that. It's like 120 pages of us back and forth, knuckleheads. And I've had some Calvinists read it. They affirm my, Calvinist street cred at the time. They think I lost my mind because I gave it up. But still, at the time, I sounded like one of them.
Sure.
But yeah, no, we were both big nerds, and we were playing video games together.
And then you became convinced that Calvinism was false.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, obviously, but over time, certain foundational things, total depravity, for instance, it get kicked out of the way, and all of a sudden, the rest of it starts to fall, and it's a kind of a precarious situation to be in, because you feel a little uncertain about your faith at the moment. But no, the Scripture restructured everything for me, right? And it was one of the best experiences of my life, even though it's hard.
And now he's like clearly your best friend in the world, right? Aside from your wife, who ipso facto is your best friend.
Exactly.
Yeah, Mark says, hi, I'm here too, so do something interesting. I have ADHD. We're trying, but no promises today. Not that Matt's not interesting, but just because we have no plans. So, and Zom is here. Zom is one of our admins over on YouTube. And so, listen, if you guys have any comments, questions, I always feel weird saying questions because it's like I'm some kind of guru that can answer everyone's questions. But if you do have any questions for us, we'd love to chat with you. I don't know how Matt Jackson is here, because he's currently also doing a live stream with Jonathan Pritchett. So I don't know what's up. He's a real multitasker here, but what's up, Matthew Jackson? Glad you guys are all on here. This is just a fun kind of episode with me and Matt. So Matt, you and I, of the Bible Breakdown guys, now Billy's awesome. I've hung out in person with both of you guys, but in separate places on separate occasions. I was at an event where I was speaking and Jonathan was speaking in Wisconsin with Billy and his wife. But you showed up for the Matt Dillahunty debate and were there, and we did an interview afterwards on that. I love Billy, and Billy and I can connect on other different stuff, but you and I have probably connected more with the specifically apologetics related stuff in the past. And we've had, by the way, Matt and I have an informal debate that we didn't realize was a debate when we were having it, that you can access on the YouTube channel at Trinity Radio, or I'm sorry, youtube.com/Braxton Hunter. Go to the debate section. I put it in the debate section, Matt, and you can listen to us. And it's funny because we were using Marco Polo and having this back and forth on the nature of time. And I thought, this is so great that it would be great for people to be able to see this. So I asked Matt, and Matt said, yeah, I'm fine with it. I thought I did well enough. I'm happy with that. So because it's Marco Polo, I set my camera up on a tripod in the Trinity Radio studio and used a DSLR camera to record the screen, with a camera recording the screen. And that's what you're seeing. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it looked good. I will say, since then, I've thought, it's been a while since I listened to it, but I know I've evolved over time and no pun intended, and changed some of my ideas on how that all works. So we should revisit that at some point.
We don't have to get too much into it to talk about one light issue related to it. I don't know if I think you just said you didn't get to see it yet, or maybe that was somebody else. Did you get to see William Lane Craig talking with cosmic skeptic Alex O'Connor?
How recent was that?
Just a couple days ago.
No, haven't seen it yet.
Alex, you know who that is? Cosmic Skeptic. He's like an atheist guy YouTube channel, Oxford student, and probably one of the biggest atheist YouTubers out there with like 400,000 subscribers. And William Lane Craig agreed to go on his show, and they talked about the Kalam. And when it came to the nature of time, so previously my understanding had been, and I'd read Craig's Time and Eternity, his book on time, but my previous thoughts on what was up there was that Craig's thought was, okay, God is timeless, sans the physical universe, and he does believe that, but then at the moment of creation and simultaneous with the coming into being of the creation, God is in time, right? And so then God, and so the way I frame that up, and I think I did so in our discussion, is God is in time in the sense that he cannot help but be aware of the timeline passing moment by moment for his creatures. And so even though, as a God standing outside of creation, he's in a timeless state, he might as well be in time in terms of his conscious experience, because time has begun for the beings that he's aware of. And so that's kind of how I chalked it up. But it sounded like Craig was going further and saying, no, in some sense, he is in time in a more robust way than that. And I was unaware of that. So it's interesting because I was talking to another apologist the other day who was saying that he had talked with Craig about this. And I know I'm kind of spouting off. I'll let you comment in a minute. But he was saying that, he had always had trouble because of this idea that sounded very much like our discussion, where let's say hypothetically God created another universe, not contiguous with our universe, but completely separate, not like part of some multiverse, but another universe. And let's say the timeline, like we had talked about before, from the first moment of creation of that universe, God is aware of time, the passing of time for those beings. And so in that sense, he's in time, quote unquote. But then let's say that whole universe ends, goes through its whole process and ends and goes out of existence, so that again, all you have is the timeless state. And then God creates a second universe. Okay, well, it would seem that what has happened is the time came and went, timelessness has come, and then a new universe has come. And so even in God's timeless state, where tenses don't make any sense, right? You would have to say that was before, like temporally before, this new universe, which is kind of a point you were driving at, where like if God's timeless and then he acts in time and then he comes out again and then he acts in time, surely from God's perspective, there is a before and an after sort of thing going on there. So I have a way, I think, of getting around that on my view, but I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And we don't have to go too deep into this.
No, it's cool. I think, well, for me, there is a logical order to the way that he works, right?
Hold up real quick. Mike Winger, What's this? A Facebook stream with no YouTube? We'll see if it becomes a YouTube thing later, but thanks for showing up, Mike.
It's logical order, right? I mean, when you have that situation where there's some kind of creation and then a break, and there's no objective clock out there that's telling us, oh, the break between this creation and the second creation was a bajillion years. We don't know. God's the standard. And so the way I've come to explain it is that time is a lot like morality in that it comes from his nature. And so I think I explained this to you, the concept of a pendulum. He is kind of the pivot point at the top. Everything contingent upon him, which is absolutely everything, is connected to him. And as he moves, the present moves. It progresses. And so anything contingent to him will experience what we call time, but perhaps at different levels. And we even experience that with relativity, things like that. Some people can be moving faster and time slows down for them, etc. So that fits with the idea that prior to creation, if he wasn't acting or doing something, then there was no progression. But as he did act, then the present progressed, and we, whatever was contingent to him at the time, experienced that progression.
So to explain that better, or no, that's not right. To explain that, to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying something like, okay, look, God is on this concept. Even if we may or may not mean this in all the robust theological ways that have to do with other aspects of his nature. But with respect to time, we might say God is changeless as the top of the pendulum, the part that it's hanging from. Like time isn't moving like for him in the same sense that it's moving for us on your framework. And then you've got the pendulum coming down. And if you look at a clock, the pendulum swinging, the part at the bottom where the, what do you call that? The hammer or whatever that is, that, sure, that thing, the big round thing that swings, that is experiencing the widest range of movement. But if you go up with every, millimeter that you go up that stem of the pendulum, it's experiencing a less of a range of movement. And so that would then map to not just Christian theological truths, but also would have something to do with the idea of, like we see, like if an astronaut goes into space who has a twin, and they're the same age, obviously, because they're twins, he goes into space, comes back, however small, there is a difference in how they have experienced time, right? The aging process. It would somehow explain those frames of time. Have I captured that properly?
Right. And I think we both agree on the A theory of time. So there's not some kind of meta timeline out there that God is moving through. He just is. And what he does and as he progresses, that is what we experience as time. This is not, the future isn't out there existing. The past isn't back behind us somewhere existing. The present exists. Okay.
So now that, yeah. So there we agree. So on the A theory of time, but would you say this? Would you say the past did exist, it no longer exists, the future will exist, it doesn't yet exist, what exists is right now?
yes, what exists is right now. The future is potential. The past is historical data, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So I've asked Jonathan to come in here. We'll see if he does. Yeah,
so he can snore at us.
Yeah, this was great because Luke Pixler people are talking in the chat primarily about the cosmic skeptic William Lane Craig discussion. And one of the things that happens is, and you're familiar enough with it, Matt, you probably know the argument as well as I do, but like sometimes people will challenge the idea that everything that begins to exist must have a cause. And one of the ways that Craig defends that is that 100% of our experience backs up that claim, and we have zero counterexamples. Like we don't have any examples of something coming into existence without a cause. And so what some skeptics and Alex brought out was, okay, but look, this is what we have is different rearrangements of physical matter, but we don't have something really coming into being from something else. So like within the universe. So like whenever you take, and his example was take a piece of wood, you start carving away at that piece of wood to make a chair. At some point, the wood is more or less chair-like, but that is saying something about us. It's a subjective statement that we make that, okay, now it's a chair. A chair has come into being. But really what you just have is a different rearrangement of pre-existing material, so that if you took that on a grand cosmic scale, all that we have are different arrangements of elementary particles, and nothing comes in. So there is no example of something coming into being at all to then make the inductive claim that everything we see comes into existence by a cause. And so they talked about that for a while. And what it came down to was, Craig said, well, that is what's called mereological nihilism. It is a position. I remember first hearing about it about 10 years ago, and it kind of tripped me up for a minute, because there is something about it that kind of seems right, but until you realize what it means. What it means is nothing has ever come into being in the history of the universe. You haven't come into being. And what Craig often says that he didn't say there that I wish he had is, what you've got here is either you have always existed, which is absurd on its face, or you don't even exist right now, which means I don't have to respond to this because I don't need to give responses to people that don't exist. Or you have not come to, because you have not yet come to, you haven't come to exist, because nothing comes to exist is kind of what it comes out to. Just finish the thought real quick. So that's where Craig says, I'm glad you're willing to admit that this is your position, because what you're actually doing is illustrating for people the price tag of the naturalistic worldview. It comes with a heavy, heavy price tag, because that's what it's costing you, is to say things like that. And so people have made a lot out of that comment that atheism comes with a huge price tag. What are your thoughts? You're about to say something.
Well, there were a couple things that it reminded me of. So in an attempt to steal, who's the good-looking guy sneaking up behind you?
Oh, yeah. And hold on, I'm going to switch between mic options. Testing. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone else can hear me. Jonathan Pritchett has entered the house. This is a Trinity Radio primetime discussion premiere episode only with them. So we've got Matt Chisholm here and 12 people in the chat, so or 12 people watching.
Well, I was on another podcast. I was on Urban Christian Institute with MJ Jackson, and then I had a phone call, and then
you're not. Hold on, I got to plug you in.
Oh.
Keep talking. They can hear you through this.
Oh, well.
Yeah, we can hear.
I had a busy day. I didn't know that you were doing this, and then I got a text to come over here, and then I looked and saw that you were live with Matt Chisholm.
You do not sound at all excited about it.
I've been talking for the past 2 hours, it seems. So, but no, it's just Matt. If Billy was here, I'd be excited.
Oh man.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Matt. I didn't mean to interrupt you, or for Jonathan to interrupt you.
No,
Carry on.
Cool. Well, I just so I can't help it when we're talking about stuff like this. I try to hear my detractors' voices in my head. It's not a schizophrenic thing. And I'm hearing Lawrence Krauss, right? He's cringing at the moment if he's listening to this, going, well, yeah, that's right. Nothing ever came into being out of nothing. Even back when he was redefining nothing at the beginning of the universe, and it's the quantum field, and there's these quantum fluctuations, and virtual particles are coming in and out of being. That takes me right back to the discussion we had before this, which is Inspiring Philosophy. Michael Jones, that's his full name, right? He's got an episode on the emerging universe. Actually, he's got a few of them. But anyway, even if you have these quantum fields, the only thing we've learned that can manipulate these essentially is a consciousness. And so, okay, fine. Prior to the Big Bang, there are these quantum fields. What is the objective observer that is going to observe the universe in the way that we are experiencing it now? Well, it has to be something that, go back to the cosmological argument, it has to be something that is outside of what we experience right now. And then you have a mind and everything else.
Yeah, Jonathan, say something so we make sure we've got your mic evened out.
I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
Okay, we're good. All right. Yeah, Mike Winger's still around. Okay, so Drew Beatty says, even outside of the cosmological argument, the intellectual price tag of atheism is way too high. Free will, moral responsibility, objective morality, knowledge, rationality, science being reliable, and any lives mattering are all illusions if atheism is true. You know, this is something that like atheists will kick back on. But I mean, like, look, like there's a discussion that I did a response video to of Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules having a discussion in Cosmic Skeptic's backyard, I think, and they agree that they agree that there is no free will. It's just determinism, and they actually think we really need to teach kids this. Like, it's really important that we get this in the schools and people begin to realize this, because it's going to affect things. Because we need to understand that if determinism is true and somebody kills his whole family and then kills himself, he's not culpable for that. Not really. Like, we're going to hold him responsible. We're going to put him in jail. We're going to do all those kind of things. But he's not really culpable in any, because he had to. He was determined to do it. And so we need a better legal structure that takes that into account and really treats people differently and perhaps appropriately, so that when they rape little children or whatever they do, horrible thing, we recognize it's not really their fault. And yeah, to be an atheist is ultimately committing yourself to these things, whether that seems obvious on the surface or not. Just like when we talk about with particular Christian theological issues like Calvinism, whether you think I'm a jerk for pointing this out or not, if you hold to divine determinism, there are things that come along with that, implications. Not everyone realizes it right away, but that ultimately it doesn't just have to do with God, electing some and passing over others. It has to do with a full-blown determinism of everything that happens in your life. And that is, these things have price tags. Our view has a price tag. The question is, does the price tag that atheism carries with it, does that seem to map to reality anyway, that there's really not this free will, morality, all these kind of things? It's interesting stuff. Good.
Yeah,
good
that's
comment,
the thing that Alex Rosenberg would say. Well, you have to pay that price because all of those things, plus the fact that you have no first person experience, that's also an illusion, and you don't actually exist, and everything else. But they would say, well, that's the price you have to pay because that's the way reality is. One of the greatest takedowns of that was William Lane Craig in their debate, though, where he took every premise and refuted, just showed how self-referentially incoherent it all was. So, it is a steep price tag. I think people want to pay it because they don't want to have to face the truth of Christianity, though. It's really more an emotional thing than,
well, it's tough. Like, people know that I've said this before, that the way I make sense of Romans 1 on this is I do think that unbelievers are suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, but I don't think that means that a particular atheist is being disingenuous when he or she says, I don't believe, because I think that we are good at lying to ourselves, and especially in a culture where part of the DNA of our culture is this empiricism and scientism and all these kind of things. I think a person is suppressing the truth, but they can get to a state where they don't realize that's what they're doing. And so I don't think any given atheist is being disingenuous, but that's the only caveat.
Yeah, the self-deceit is so deep that it's lost on them that's what's.
Yeah.
Romans 1. I mean, that's the conclusion that he draws at the end of Romans 1 is God's made himself known to everybody. And if they suppress the truth and they continue in that, then God's going to turn them over to that state of mind. So, yeah, no, I think people, and getting into types of apologetics, the presuppositionalists who go, there are no atheists. I think there are. I think they didn't have an excuse at one point, but they have slowly suppressed that. And then you look at the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, the word is taken from them. So they no longer believe, but it was there at one point.
Yep, I think you're right. Daniel James Hole, speaking of, I think he's our resident Calvinist here. He says, Braxton, currently learning biblical Hebrew. Any advice for when I learn biblical Greek?
The same advice is to do it every day. Practice every day. And if you can...
Pritchett and I have gone through the Mounts book
on
Greek
if you just
2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah, you just gotta, if you use it or lose it, man. Just stay on top of it every day. Dedicate time to it every day. Listen to things in Hebrew or Greek if you're taking Greek. Do your flashcards. Memorize your paradigms. Label things around the house. Just immerse the immersion thing.
And we need to start again.
Yeah, it's you just gotta stay on top of it. That's the only advice I can give you. It's just at the end of the day, it's just information. Learning foreign, other languages, biblical languages, foreign languages, whatever. It's not insurmountable for anybody. It's not hard. It's just you've got to stay on top of it.
Zom says, Braxton, I'm still curious about your view on tongue. This would be good to get Matt's impression too. Now that Dr. Pritchett is not here to heckle you.
Well,
and then,
too late. He told me to come in.
And then later he says, uh-oh, he's here.
Yeah. So don't worry. I'll clean up everything they get wrong.
Actually, if you...
No, you're free. Yeah, just go ahead. I think my view is the same, though, actually.
If you become a patron, you get access to a little debate that, just like my debate with you, Matt, on time, just kind of happened. This kind of happened in the midst of us talking about something completely unrelated. And so I think there is a difference. I think there's a relevant difference.
Well, there's that difference is how do you interpret Acts chapter 2, but I don't think that we differ too much on much else to do with tongues as far as the modern.
No. So in terms of, there's two questions here. The one question is, whatever it is it still operative? And I think, since I'm not a cessationist, I'm a cautious continuationist. I think that it is likely. I don't see any good reason to believe that whatever was going on in the early church in the New Testament time with this has ended or can't happen or doesn't happen. But so that's one question. The other question would be, what is it? And the options there that I think are that I'm aware of are, is it an actual human language, an ability to speak an actual human language, perhaps for the purposes of evangelism, that you just don't know that language, but you're given the ability to speak it? Or is it that or, like it could be both that and this, a heavenly language like that.
Ecstatic utterance.
Yeah, an ecstatic utterance that isn't a human known language, an earthly language. And I have to admit, there is stuff on both sides of that I got to deal with.
And the other view is it just a static utterance?
So to delineate,
there's three views. It's either a known human language and a static utterance, or both of those things are true.
Say that again.
It's either an ecstatic utterance, a known human language, or three, sometimes it's a human language that's known, and sometimes it's just an ecstatic utterance.
Yeah, right. That's what I said. Yeah. I said, so sometimes it's like you're equating ecstatic utterance.
Well, you said
with
it's some.
Well,
there are people who think it's exclusively ecstatic utterance.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's one or the other or both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Three options.
So that on the one hand you've got in Acts chapter 2 where they were they were
Don't give
given,
away for free what people should have to pay for.
Well, we're not going to debate it. I'm just laying out what's out there.
Okay.
So you have this situation where the apostles, newly dubbed, were then speaking in a variety of languages. Well, this is the trick, right? Because it says that they were speaking in other languages in like verse 4, if I'm not mistaken. And then later it says that they were heard in these other languages. And so there, to me, it's
we know in their own dialect.
We know this is a group of people from various different provinces and regions all together. There might have been a need to speak in other languages for the proclamation of the gospel. There is a minor case can be made against that Greek was somewhat of a universal language in the region at the time, much like English is very well known in Western countries today and stuff. So that's kind of, that strikes me as making sense of
Luke has a question.
Well, we'll get there. That strikes me as making sense of it as a human language that's just not known by the speaker. But then you do have Paul seeming to act like it's beneficial to you personally, and it causing confusion. It's a tough issue, but I still come down on the side of it's human languages that the person doesn't know, because I actually think we do have, though anecdotal as they are, cases of that in the modern world. Matt, what say you?
I tend to agree. I think that the places where people try to argue from the Bible that it is an angelic language, I think Paul's being hyperbolic there. He's listing off a bunch of things that are radical. He doesn't have all knowledge. He can't have all wisdom, right? And so he says, whether I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, he's not necessarily saying that that's a possibility, although I assume angels can speak. So I don't think it's that. I don't think you're praying in some hidden secret or unknowns to us angelic language. And I also don't think it is, I've heard some people appeal to Romans 8 and the groanings of the Holy Spirit. And so when you are praying in this prayer language or speaking in these utterances that don't make any sense, well, it's just a prayer language that God understands. That passage is saying that the Holy Spirit is groaning on your behalf. It's not saying you do it. So I think I don't have a problem believing that God can impart this gift, or maybe just miraculously give it. I don't know if it qualifies as a gift if it's not kind of at your command. I don't know. I don't have a problem with him doing that when he needs to do it. I don't know that. I'll put it this way. Yeah, I've never experienced it.
Yeah, I'm glad God has your permission. And if you want to hear with a little bit more meat to it, why what he just said was wrong, become a patron and listen to me argue with Braxton about it.
And you'll hear with a little bit more meat to it why he's right. So we have 2 against 2 here. Me and Matt against you and Zom, because Zom says I'm on your side, Dr. Pritchett. Well, that's the great thing. You know, between the 2 of us on Trinity Radio, you'll find someone to agree with if you're a Christian on some things.
You can be right or you can agree with Braxton.
Oh, man.
Luke had a question.
Luke, I was just thinking, Luke, this question?
Yeah. How can a Calvinist have assurance of salvation? How would you know if you're elect? Well, I would assume a Calvinist could possibly answer that you have assurance of salvation the way anyone else does, practically speaking. If you're believing on the Lord Jesus Christ for your salvation and you're seeing evidence of the Spirit in your life, you have as much assurance as anybody, regardless of what your soteriology is. However, Calvin himself invented the problem for Calvinists with this evanescent grace concept. That God could cause you to somehow think all of that's true about yourself, but you're just mistaken. And then when you apostatize, so to speak, walk away from Christianity, you're doubly ready for damnation than you were prior somehow. Given...
Well, you got to do something about people that really, really, really seem to be believers.
Yeah.
And then fall away.
Right. You should believe what the Bible says. There's where Matt and I agree and you don't. You got to believe what the Bible says, that when the Bible says you can walk away from the faith and shipwreck it and fall from grace, that you really can. But no, Calvin created this problem because his view you would always have to wonder, is God allowing me or actively deceiving me into thinking I believe this stuff? And how would I ever? Yeah, you don't know until you stop believing, and then you're like, oh, that's how that works.
And in this way, not literally, but
you can't believe, that's how.
Pragmatically,
but you can't believe that that's how that worked in Calvin, because then you'd have to believe that God actually existed if you walked away from Christianity's true, and Calvinism is true, and then you're stuck in a loop. How do you get out of that? So Calvinism makes it, at least Calvin, and I love Calvin. Everyone knows that I'm a big read Calvin, read the Institute. Some of his commentaries are quite helpful. Everyone knows I like Calvin. I don't
think
agree with
everyone
it.
knows that. I'm glad you said
I've said it several hundred times on our show and Facebook.
You've said several hundred times.
Yes,
you like John Calvin.
I like reading Calvin.
But listen.
Read Calvin, but he made a complete disaster of this. And it's a complete mess, and Calvinists should have no assurance whatsoever because you may be being deceived.
But here's an interesting thing, is not in a real, like, literal, actual ontological way, but at least pragmatically, from your perspective, it kind of feels like a works-based salvation. Because even though it technically isn't, if I don't end up, persevering to the end. Well, I guess not works-based. It'd still be belief-based. But it ends up, here's what it is. It ends up, practically speaking, no different than what the person who believes you can apostatize believes. Because if I don't end up making it to the end without turning away, then I never was really saved to begin with, and I've had evanescent grace, right? Whereas the apostatizer, person who believes in apostasy, is saying, no, it's not that you had evanescent grace. You just had it and then you left it. Yeah. Is basically the difference. So this is exactly the reason why I say on this issue, practically speaking, for evangelism, here's the important thing. And here's what I've said several hundred times. If a person seems really on fire for God, evangelistic, reaching people for Jesus, I mean, everything gives you the impression, and then they walk away and they become an atheist, the person who believes you can apostatize is going to say, we got to go reach them for Christ because now they're lost again, but we need to go reach them for Christ. Whereas the person who believes in eternal security or perseverance of the saints is going to say, we need to go reach them for Christ because they never were saved to begin with. But practically speaking, both categories are saying we need to go reach them for Christ. Right?
Yeah, but on the assurance question, I still think that concept creates a mess that every Calvinist should try agree. Cowering in a corner because you don't know. And then if you did apostatize, you're stuck thinking, well, I guess that might explain it. But if that explains it, then why am I not still a Christian? Because I believe in this Christian idea, that God allowed me.
I agree with you that
it's just weird.
Real quick, Matt, I agree with you, Pritchett, that
because if people who hold apostasy, the conditional security, if I rejected the faith tomorrow and just went out and became an atheist, then objective morality would not be true, and so that I continue to make you think I was so I could keep my job. But let's say I stopped believing. I would be like, well, at least if Christianity was true, which it's not because I don't believe in it anymore or whatever, it's like at least those people could say, the Matt Chisholms of the world could say, well, he really was a Christian and now he's not. Whereas the other person say was God either actively or passively deceived him. And now Pritchett's going to go to hell because he doesn't believe it anymore. So I don't know. It still comes out better for the conditional security folks on this one. Now, this doesn't really do anything for the typical Baptist-y eternal security Leighton Flowers, Braxton Hunter view, because you guys don't think that they had evanescent grace, because that's not...
Yeah, I think you might...
That's different than just saying they were never... Because it's one thing to say, well, they never really were Christians to begin with, They never really had a faith of shipwreck from to begin with. They were never really connected to the Bible. Regardless of what the Bible says, you can have this view that Leighton and Braxton have. Which is... And that's still... You like the way I phrase that. It's still different than the evanescent grace, because with their view, it's like, wow, well, they weren't ever Christians in the first place, so it makes sense that they're not Christian now. But the Calvinist has to say that this person was either actively or passively deceived. And because determinism is true, it's ultimately, God decreed for that person to be so self-deceived that he actually believed he was a believer in Christ.
Jonathan, let me talk.
How do you really feel about this?
You were talking the whole time before I got here, so I'm making up for all the time that you.
First of all, Matt needs to talk, but I want to say what you may have said this, but I stopped listening because I was messing with our name card. But I will give you this. This is an important thing. The person who believes in apostasy, not by sin, but by willfully defecting from the faith, that person, I think, can have more assurance than the Calvinist who believes in Calvin's evanescent grace that's a possibility, because you don't ever know, but that God might determine you to walk away, determine you to defect. Whereas on the apostasy view, just so long as I don't defect, then I don't. What do I have to not be sure about?
Right.
Matt, over to you.
Well, one of the ironic things is that a Calvinist who would probably, I think, if they're honest, would have to admit that what Jonathan said is true and what we believe is true. If God is using a Calvinist for so many years as a Christian and then removes grace from them so that they do apostatize while they're a Calvinist, while they're a Christian, or pretending to be a Christian, I guess, they would have to admit that their apostasy would be for his greatest glory, and they would have to approve of it, which is a very weird thing. Like it's very logically inconsistent. So and of course, I agree with Jonathan on the you can walk away thing.
Now, Colin Nolan says something that raises an interesting discussion that needs to be had. This is one of the pastoral reasons Arminius questioned Calvinism, is the assurance issue and antinomian logical outgrowths of the system. Now, this second issue is also important to discuss, because whatever you want to say, are we going to be fair here, guys? We all agree to be fair here?
No.
I threw you guys bones. It's time for y'all to throw bones. Here's the thing. For a Southern Baptist, we're not talking about Calvinists here, although I think this goes for Calvinists. The antinomian question, which says this whole idea is the idea that you can sin all you want and you're okay because grace will abound, right? And Paul says to that, God forbid, right? The antinomian, I can do whatever I want. Here's the thing. Why am I fuzzy now? I'm like fuzzy. Are we fuzzy? I don't know. Anyway, the thing is, if you believe that sinning isn't going to cause you to lose your salvation, but willfully defecting causes you to no longer be saved, then you got that same allegation, which I think is a bogus allegation, can be made against the person who believes in apostasy, just like it can the person who believes in eternal security.
No.
Why not?
Because, if you understand sin as the New Testament does, then it is deceptive and it is constantly misleading you and guiding you. And that's why Paul says don't practice those things, because it does lead you away from the faith. It will eventually harden you. That's the whole idea behind phusis, the second nature in Ephesians 2.
Sure, but what you're saying, if I understand you, is you're saying the sin, you would, and you and Pritchett may be on different tracks here. I don't know. I don't think you are. But you would be saying the sin doesn't cause you don't lose your salvation on account of the sin. You lose your salvation, for lack of better terminology, because you abandon your faith willfully, or because you stop believing, right?
Right. A pattern of practicing sin will lead you to harden yourself against what God wants, and eventually you will stop caring.
So let me give you an analogy that I gave Pritchett that he likes, and see if you like it. So let's say we're on a highway, and we'll call this the King's Highway. And we're going down the King's Highway, and there are rules to this highway. There is a way you're supposed to behave, as there is on any highway. And so we're trucking along, and everyone on this highway, I'll spoil the thing, I won't bury the lead. These are the saved people on the King's Highway driving according to the rules as best they can. Everyone screws up, but when you screw up, you tell the policeman, you repent, you keep going. This is how it's happening. But you see across the field over there, like a derby where you can just go in the dunes and drive any old which way and nobody cares. People running into people and dying and all that. And ultimately everyone there is going to be destroyed one day in a huge explosion. But the fact is they're over there and nobody's making them feel ashamed. Nobody's judging them. Nobody is telling them what the rules are. And to illustrate what I think you're saying would be like saying, and I think this is fair, is to say, okay, if you're on the King's Highway and you start driving in the emergency lane all the time or swerving around in traffic, nobody's going to throw you off the King's Highway because of your sins of driving that way in traffic. But you're going to ultimately get to the point with the hardening of the heart, like you're saying, you're going to ultimately get to the point where people are treating me with shame and contempt for this. I'm not comfortable at all. I really want to keep doing this swerving and stuff that I'm doing. So I'm going to go over there to this mud hole and do what I want to do. So it wasn't actually the infractions that you committed on the King's Highway that got you thrown off. It was the continued shame of the culture, honor shame culture.
They're
the
all
continued
honking
shame.
at you and you just
they're all honking. People are telling me, I don't like
They're
this.
trying to save your metaphor for you since you went from King's Highway to a mud hole where no one drives.
No, the mud hole is over there. The mud hole is the Derby.
Yeah.
Over there.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I didn't
is
that what you think,
because
Matt?
of the swerving sin, you decide to take the exit ramp and just go over to the Derby instead.
Right. Is that where you are, Matt?
Yeah, more or less. And I think another analogy for the listeners would be, and I think we can all relate to this, is food. That if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to stay healthy, etc., and you get in the habit, okay, well, I'm just going to have a midnight snack tonight, but I'll be all right. I'm gonna be better. And then like the next night, you're like, man, that sandwich I ate yesterday was good. I'm going to have it again. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, where you were keeping your calories in line every day, you're just overeating because, forget it. I like it.
No. But the problem there, I appreciate that. But the problem there is that food is actually the thing making you fat.
Yes, but you can resist. But at some point, not everybody, obviously, but I think they're having experienced it, right? At some point, I decided I'm just not going to pay attention to the whole calories thing. I don't care about my health. I'm just gonna eat. I'll be fine. You know, like.
So there we would liken maybe your salvation to a diet. You're on a diet. Well, that's the relationship or the status. I'm dieting. And you can still be said to be dieting if you commit if you commit the sin of eating the
if you have a cheat day.
Chocolate. Yeah, you have a cheat day or whatever. But if you start doing that too much, at some point it's not
a diet anymore.
It's not
You've
a diet,
got a new diet.
And you did that to yourself. But see, I still don't like that because the problem there, it still sounds like we could say about that. Because the line that we're trying...
You can eat your way out of heaven like you can sin your
Right.
Yeah.
The line we're trying to delineate...
But you can't. That's the thing. Because of what Matt said earlier, that sin is what... It's not that Jesus doesn't forgive those sins, but those sins lead you to the place of unbelief. Just like the food leads you to the place of being obese. So we used to, and I understand where Braxton's confused here because we did say, it's not that you can't sin your way out of heaven. Actually, you can. You can sin your way to lost salvation because, or forfeited salvation because that sin puts you on a path to where it becomes unbelief. But
the reason I'm looking
because otherwise, if sin wasn't involved, if your sanctification was as it should be, you wouldn't have unbelief.
But the reason I'm trying to help you guys out, because you need help here.
No.
You need an analogy that crisply delineates not just in your head, yeah, I know that makes sense, but to the listener, the difference between I sinned 14 and a half times and now I'm lost, to the difference between that and no, it's not your sinning that makes you lost, that gives you that status. That is something that makes it more likely that you will apostatize. But you need something that crisply does that, because otherwise you've still got everyone in the world saying about you guys, oh, y'all think you can lose your salvation.
I don't like the phrase "lose your salvation."
That's what I'm saying.
You can throw that phrase at me, and I'm like, well, if that's the kind
what I'm trying to communicate.
Dumb evangelical phrase that you have to use because you're not a thinker.
Don't be
that's fine. I believe that you can lose your salvation, because I do believe that
Look, he said it better than any of us.
No, because what you want...
Sin leads to apostasy. Apostasy.
Yep.
Sin doesn't cause apostasy. That's it. That's what we want to say. Thank you, Colin. There. Y'all say that now. You'll do better if you say that.
Sin does cause apostasy, though. Sin is the...
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't... well, in a sense, it does.
Y'all go figure yourselves out and then come back and tell
because
us.
Look, here's what you want us to say. No one can apostatize until they stand up on a soapbox and say, I don't believe anymore.
No, that's not.
I don't believe that at all.
No.
I believe that someone can continually make propositional claims that they believe in Jesus as their Savior, but if they live as if that's not true, I think that they have apostatized. Because
it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what's true.
Yeah, and that is what's true, because most people think that faith and believe is this idea that I affirm a proposition, and that's not.
No. You know I don't think that.
I mean,
Come
thank
on now.
God for Matthew Bates, but now everyone wants to. I mean, Matthew Bates wasn't the first person to come up with the allegiance. That's been what it was for.
And he didn't go far enough in some of that. I read the book too.
Right, he didn't actually. That's gonna make the Southern Baptists nervous, because they don't like the fact that little Timmy, who got saved at the altar call, lives like the devil and still says, "Yeah, I believe in that Jesus stuff." Yeah, that dude's not a Christian. Okay, Jesus doesn't care what you prayed. So.
Yeah, no. Okay, the people in the pews believe all kinds of things.
Right.
But no Southern Baptist scholar who understands these matters is saying something like, just because you said some words in a series.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what they want to believe about little Timmy. Well, he did give his life to Christ once, and that means he's still saved, because he still says he believes and loves Jesus, even though he's got no evidence whatsoever of it, because he did once.
Well, this is where
I don't believe that you have to say, I renounce my Christian faith in order to have renounced your Christian faith.
Okay, but here's the thing. Well, you know what needs to be said about little Timmy? I'm going to be the unifier. I am going to bring everyone here together. You know what needs to be said about little Timmy, who's out carousing and getting into running around with wild women and drinking and smoking and all these
I'm also not saying that's why he's an apostle.
No. But you know what needs to be said about him? Whatever he is that's causing you to judge that he's lost, here's what needs to happen. Somebody needs to go talk to Timmy about getting right with the Lord. That's what needs to happen. Call it whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Well, so this raises a point that we made. We had an episode about it, and it's the issue that even though people are really dogmatic about being once saved, always saved, ignoring the Calvinist side of this, you should never teach it directly to someone as if they are for sure saved, because you can't ever know their state. In the same way, you should always, whether they're backsliding or they've apostatized, you should encourage someone to repent, draw them back into the relationship with Christ. You can't tell a Christian, yeah, you're for sure locked in and saved, and no matter what you do. So you can't really teach the thing. You have to teach exactly what the Bible does, which is persevere until you die. Run the race to the end.
Right, because just as much as Paul was interested in believers having assurance, Paul was interested in believers in the church being scared and testing themselves and examining themselves and having fear of the Lord and fleeing from sin. You know, you can highlight the proofs you want for your thing, but you got to balance them out with the other things. Paul did not care that every person had assurance all the time. You know, that it's good to have. You should have assurance, but you should also be mindful and continually examine yourself and test yourself.
Want to say that Drew Beatty has a important place in the history of Trinity Radio, as he turned up to the Matt Dillahunty debate along with me and Matt Chisholm, and basically told Matt that he was being disingenuous.
Yes, he had the best statement in the world. It rattled the right feathers, and then you had to go play softball instead of just
good cop. Yeah.
I didn't know who Drew Beatty was, but I'm glad. I think God intended it to work out the way it did.
Stuck a knife in his gut, and you, instead of twisting it like you should have, you were like, "Let me wipe this off. Let me take this out of you and give you a little Band-Aid to make you feel better."
Okay, but here's the point I wanted to get back to.
I stand with Drew, even though he agrees with Braxton on this stuff.
On the perseverance of the... Wait, where are we? on the eternal security and the antinomianism. For those that are new to these terminology, again, that's the thing where, because I'm saved and can't lose my salvation, now I get to sin all I want. Look, first of all, now we're not talking about the biblical fact of the matter here. We're talking about this criticism and whether or not it sticks on its own. And here's the thing. That is, that logically doesn't follow that, because that doesn't seem, it seems like it's giving a way for a person with who believes in eternal security. Like, it makes it sound bad. Like, you start teaching that stuff, people are going to start sinning because they can't lose their salvation. That's like an appeal to fear, which is a form of an appeal to emotion. The question,
what if it's been demonstrated?
Do what?
What if it's been demonstrated? Same with in Calvinists, you can challenge them with this as well. I've known Calvinists who said, well, yeah, I was into this bad stuff, but I just assumed God wanted me to be if I was, because it was determined.
Okay, this is great, because we're going to do a Socratic thing right here. So let me ask you, all right, on your view, what if someone says, I can go sleep with my girlfriend, or I can cheat on my wife, because afterwards I'm going to ask God to forgive me, and he will?
That technically is true, but by participating in that kind of sin and doing it willfully, you are it is deceptive. It will draw you away. You will harden yourself if you continue to do this. Don't do it.
I think that's one thing to say. Another thing I think you could say is, if you're thinking that way, I'm not sure how Christian you are, right? I mean, you're trying to get out of it. I mean, honestly, isn't that like the same thing you just said? If the person with eternal security thinks, I can go on sinning that grace may abound, even though he knows Paul addresses that very thing and he knows God doesn't want it, right? That doesn't sound like a Christian to me.
Right. I agree
Yeah.
with that.
So, and then secondly, yeah, there are examples of people that there was actually a cult of people that on everything else agreed with, like all of, classical Christianity on all this stuff, but they were teaching antinomianism, do whatever you want. So of course there are examples, but here's the question. You guys have both been in Southern Baptist churches for much of your life. And I want to know, how many people do you know who really thought that way? Most of the people in Southern Baptist life I knew thought one of two ways. They either thought, I'm not sure that we Baptists have got this right, and I might lose my salvation. Or they thought, yeah, but that's not legit. What if I do that, if I start operating that way, maybe that will demonstrate I was never saved, right? So you still get the same pragmatic payoff, I think, on that. What say you? Have you guys really known a lot of people who are like, I'm just gonna, because Paul can, you just take it.
No, I don't know anyone in the Southern Baptist Church that I can recall that expressed that as a view. But I know plenty in the Southern Baptist Church who live that as if it was their views.
Well, I know plenty of people in the Assembly of Gods or anywhere else that live like the devil and claim to be Christians. That's just a separate question.
Not at the AOG, you don't.
Yeah, I've known a handful of people, tops, less than 5. One of them is in prison right now, so like extreme example.
You probably get saved there.
I hope so. But I don't know. What you said goes back to how it's taught in the Bible, which is run the race, persevere to the end. Should we even fight over, and people do fight over, whether or not once saved, always saved is true, or should we just teach people exactly what the Bible is, which is a little bit of fear mixed with encouragement and good sound teaching. Persevere in faith. Abide in him.
Yes. Amen.
Guess what? John McAllister is on. I'm on team John McAllister. Every gospel presentation should be under the assumption that no one hearing the message is saved. If you're doing if you're doing an evangelistic thing, just assume that they're lost and preach that way, because and that's what I've done throughout my ministry.
Yes,
and guess what? A lot of people that, how does Dr. Elliott say it? In every congregation, there are people who are, I don't know how he's got some clever way of saying that, but yeah, there's a lot of people in the church who may even believe that they're in a relationship with God that aren't. And that's an important feature, I think, to get out there.
Put Colin Nolan's up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Sunday school kids that think they are safe and do whatever they want in high school and college. It's baby carnal Christians. It's less prevalent with mature believers.
I agree. It's less prevalent with mature believers. Absolutely. I think at a certain point of sanctification, the difference. But I disagree that it's children only. I do think that that's something that's a problem. But I've known adults, I've known grandparents who thought that way because when they were a kid, they went down, they got baptized, they did the whole deal. And so they're Christian, but you would never know it based on their fruit, based on how they live their life. So I don't think it's just kids. That's where it starts.
All right. Well, this conversation has so far been fantastic. We've been at it for an hour and 2 minutes. We have 9 viewers.
It's awesome.
But hey, that's like a small group hanging out, But we didn't advertise this, Pritchett. I just you don't even know what happened, but I went to get you because I thought we should do something for the Facebook group. And then I was like, well, I'll call Matt. And Matt was free.
I was like, what are we going to talk about? We didn't know. So, hey, let me ask y'all, what are your plans for Trinity Radio moving forward? Same status quo or anything different?
We have things that we need to do, like, Braxton's is going to keep doing 1 to 2 other videos besides we're regular Friday video now.
And this Friday, everyone, you don't even know this. This Friday, Tim Stratton's going to join us.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Less time for me to talk. Just kidding.
They all know you're kidding. Well,
But do they?
So here's what's
My
happened.
wife would say, no, he's being serious.
So here's what's happened with Trinity Radio. So we used to be like a everything show, like theology, apologetics, church stuff, practical Christian living. And after the Matt Dillahunty debate, as I was saying at the start of this stream, a lot of people started challenging what I've been saying. I started seeing video responses to me. And so I was like, I got to respond to this. And Pritchett's not available right now, but I got to get it out there and get it up. That's how I thought back then. And so I started doing some stuff without Pritchett. And then that kind of, once you get into your audience gets used to 2 or 3 videos a week and they're really popping. I mean, listen, I'll admit this here. If you find someone who loves to hear himself talk and an audience that wants to hear him talk and will click, you've got an addict in front of you. And that's what happened to me. I became addicted to YouTube. But also, it's like I tell my pastor, our pastor who's been on the show, he has like 1,500 on Sunday morning or 1,600 across 3 campuses. And a lot of them are there because it's church and this is what we do. I've got 2,000 people who will show up to hear me and Pritchett talk 3 times a week who are mostly atheists and are doing it of their own free will, whether they know it or not. And so I've become really addicted, and we've just done that a lot. So it's and then I found that if you have a niche like this, responding to atheist videos, that a niche grows fast. A niche grows faster on YouTube, and it's in line with our mission. And so I just thought this seems like a way to do it. Now, as you grow, you can kind of branch off more, and you have viewership for the different things. So we want to continue. We've been saying this for a long, long time, but we both need to finish. He needs to finish the First Peter series that he started. I need to finish the Genesis series that I started. But also,
we're thinking about starting a channel called TR Extra. Wasn't that the name we came up with?
Trinity Radio Extra.
Yeah, Trinity Radio Extra. And we were going to move all the non-apologetic stuff to a second channel because YouTube's weird, and the weird algorithm things and all of this other stuff that is good to, once you find a lane that works for you, stay in that lane. The problem is we like to drive in multiple lanes. So we thought about just kind of having a sister channel to where we would put our because if we upload a Genesis commentary or my First Peter thing, if we put that back on the main channel, that's going to mess with certain algorithms in YouTube, right? That
if we have so we found like if we do a subject, like even when I've done abortion related stuff, since we've built this crowd on the apologetics to atheists, that gets a lot less views. Now we do stuff like that occasionally because we think that God wants us to, but when you have videos that get substantially lower views, it hurts things with the algorithm.
What he's talking about is when I have a video where I talk about how professors pick seminary books. It says, answer that your dad thought would be a good video. And then like 500 people at the most watch it instead of the big numbers. He's like, this is jacking up our thing. And so when I want to do a video like that, or we want to do something off topic, we don't want it to mess with the main channel's views. But we also know that a lot of patrons have been with us for a long time that are not strictly, they came for the variety show, not just the one trick pony.
Mostly the people in this
right.
Facebook group.
And so, but there's another side to that with to reach the most people, you got to keep your videos high. And so we're going to start a second channel where we don't have to care as much about the science and computer algorithms and all of that stuff, about making sure our stuff stays in front of the people it needs to stay in front of. Whereas if you love us already, you're going to go ahead and watch what we do on the second channel. If it only gets 150 or 200 views, we still gave it to the people who wanted it. We still got to talk about that stuff because we think it's important, but it's not affecting the main mission. So we've got that coming down the pipe.
And fun stuff. Like Jonathan's had this great idea for a long time, like debates that you wouldn't expect. Well, what's like should Christians cuss?
Yeah.
Should Christians drink alcohol?
What was the best Bible kill?
Yeah, what's the best kill in the Bible?
Who was the hottest chick in the Bible? Things like that.
I do not approve of that one.
Debates that people will actually care about. So we've got that, and then there's like 8 or 9 of us that are even starting a different channel. Where everyone uploads like one video a month or something. That'll be fun too.
Luke says you should do more of these Facebook Lives. I enjoy having the interaction, or maybe an actual small group for patrons on Zoom or something. That's
a good idea. We should actually do it just for the patrons, so that.
Well, and I think who he's mentioning with Zoom is like, say we had, we've got a number of patrons, but like if out of those patrons only 10 or 11 showed up like this for the Zoom call, you have them all on the screen. You could all talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea. Good job,
We
Luke.
need to do that. We have totally done wrong to our patrons by not doing.
Magnino Alex says hottest kill in the Bible sounds fun. Yeah. So all right. So that's kind of where we're going with that is to do that. I kind of, what we're doing right now, we've kind of moved into phase 2, and that is we're now doing live streams. Before the coronavirus, we didn't do live streams. This is new. We did one last summer with Inspiring Philosophy, and it didn't even look good because we didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. Now we're able to do it in a proficient way. So that's been a big thing. And so we've had Mike Lycona on here. I'd like to do some debates on here.
That'd be interesting.
You want to debate somebody, Matt?
Sure.
What do you want to debate?
I want him and Billy to do the first Bible battle. That'd be awesome.
You got to find something we disagree on, which is usually movies or something stupid.
That's great. That's perfect. Colin Nolan says, JP, any thoughts on any shows on patristics for Protestants now that Odin is asleep? He's dead, I guess. Someone needs to carry the Paleo Orthodoxy banner.
What does he mean by shows?
I don't know. What do you mean by shows? Like podcasts he recommends, or persons that he thinks is... Oh, maybe he's saying you should do some shows on your new... Yeah, he's saying you should do some shows on your new channel like that. Doing Odin type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about that stuff. Yeah, I mean, we could. I don't know if I'll do a series on it, but yeah, that stuff will come up for TR Extra. Yeah.
John McAllister says best Bible kill Ehud. Yeah, you guys are familiar with that, right? Where he sticks him with the sword, and the king is so fat that all his fat rolls out over his hand, and he can't pull his sword out.
Yeah. I thought Jezebel would be a good one. Pretty sure she's the one that falls out a window and breaks open on rocks and dogs eat it.
They eat her, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Matt, we could shut this down. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest? This is your first time kind of on Trinity Radio.
It is. Yeah, honored to be here. I just bro down. We've kind of taken a hiatus for those who might listen, and but we're coming back.
You can't do that. That's how you lose. You can't. You need to do it by yourself if you have to do it by yourself.
You say that, but I don't know. I mean, we have 300 episodes in the backlog, and we've got it's so. Yes, a lot of our stuff is around the gospel, universal witness, things like that, but it's kind of a wide variety of things. So I don't feel too bad about taking a break while coronavirus is going on and Billy's work situation is a little different. But when we get back to it, the idea is to kind of backtrack and start laying out systematically from theology, anthropology, hamartiology onward, just what we know, what we believe now as it's evolved over time, and get into discussions with people.
So you're going to do like a confessions episode and then also go into everything that you've changed your mind about.
Yeah, pick some fights with people, things like that.
No, good. Hey, pick one with us. I don't care what it is.
The dude that got hanged by his hair is Absalom.
Riding his horse. Yeah.
And Joab, was it Joab? Joab, the head of the military under David, shot him with arrows. Right? Right, guys? Not Joab. Joab?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
It's a good thing this is just in the Patreon. In the
bad way to go, anyway.
We don't know our Bibles.
But yeah, we'll be back at it.
Yeah. So, what else was I going to say? You're talking about, if you're interested in the question of what about people who never hear the gospel, how does God judge those people? What's going on with that? That is a big issue. Like Leighton Flowers' big thing is soteriology. If the Bible had one thing, I think of it as being
aliens.
Yeah, aliens.
But
really, why wouldn't you just have one of your biggest fans over at Bible Brodown be your co-host when Billy's not around?
I'm your biggest fan. I'll do it.
I've invited you on. We've talked about like things to talk. We've discussed issues. Topics, but we haven't nailed anything down.
Yeah.
We didn't nail anything down with this.
Right. You gotta say, we're going to talk about this, Pritchett, and then I'll think of something to say, but I don't.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up, but
let's go.
Listen, guys, it's been fun. And check out the other shows on the Trinity Commission. And those are Leighton Flowers, Soteriology 101, The Bible Brodown with Matt Chisholm and Billy Whitland, Steve Gregg's The Narrow Path. And I know we've been saying this for a long time, but soon, and very soon, there's at least 2 more that are going to be added. So look forward to that, and we'll see you next time